So the NBA season is basically here. Regular season games start in about a month. Preseason stuff starts this week. If I'm not mistaken, training camp and media day for some of the teams that play overseas is going to happen on the exact same day that I upload this video. So if you want to be updated on all the new events that are occurring in the NBA space, make sure you hit the subscribe button, notification bell. However, specifically pertaining to this video, as we move beyond the off season and prepare for a new year, I wanted to make a very clear, coherent, and concise video outlining one of the most complex, complicated, and overall, potentially the biggest story the NBA community has had in quite some time. And of course, as you know, that is a whole Kawhi Leonard, Steve Ballmer, Clippers aspiration story, where effectively the allegation is that the Clippers and Steve Ballmer use a company by the name of Aspiration to circumvent the salary cap to pay Kawhi Leonard nearly $50 million. Now, to be honest with you, originally I was going to milk this story as much as I could, upload a video every single time Pablo gave us a new update. However, bro, this story is like way more complex than I originally thought, and instead I deemed it much more necessary and probably more important to just give you one big video outlining all the important events that have occurred over the past few years, especially with all of the new findings that we've seen over the past couple of weeks now. And with that being said, let's get right into this because it's definitely very convoluted. Okay, let's bring it back all the way when Kawhi was with the Spurs. I know this is a very long time ago, but it is very important to highlight some of the foundational pieces that's happening in Kawhi throughout his career. So as many of us know, Kawhi during the 2017 playoffs gets injured by Zaza Pachulia. The following season, he's still trying to rehab from said injury. The Spurs clear him medically. However, he still doesn't believe that he is ready to go. He forces himself to play, but only 9 games before he shuts himself down. And from that moment on, Kawhi and the Spurs don't really see eye to eye. And who is really pushing a rift between the two entities just so happens to be his representative, being his uncle, who is known as Uncle Dennis. Now, to be fair, during this point in time, Tony Parker is also playing a part in this as well, as he makes public statements questioning the ability of Kawhi to play through his injuries or even questioning how severe the injury is. So that certainly isn't helping, but it is stated, even when Kawhi was playing in San Antonio, that Uncle Dennis was playing a role in some of the decisions that were being made behind the scenes. Now, as we all know, eventually this rift grows so wide that it results in Kawhi demanding a trade. He eventually gets moved to Toronto, and as soon as he touched down in the T-Dot, Kawhi and Uncle Dennis immediately start making demands. Now, these demands early on aren't that extravagant. Matter of fact, these demands really are aligned with the idea of how to properly prepare Kawhi's body for a deep postseason run, effectively just telling them how many games we're going to play, we're not going to play back-to-backs, how many minutes, etc., etc. Obviously, the Raptors agree, and they conform to these demands, and it results very favorably for both parties as the Raptors go on to finish that season as the NBA champions. Moving forward is where things get much more juicier, because in the summer of 2019, allegedly, Kawhi and Uncle Dennis are making crazy demands. They're flying from Toronto to LA across the country, making pretty steep demands. And at first, some of these requests are pretty simple. Car, house, plane, then it gets a little steeper. Demands are trading for a co-star that eventually turns out to be Paul George. But the steepest request that is obviously cap circumvention is alleged request of getting paid with endorsement deals beyond the salary cap, and even going as far as to ask for equity in teams. That's crazy. Now, because this is outside of the rules of the CBA, allegedly, when the Lakers and Raptors heard of this, they declined the offers. But again, allegedly, the Clippers were desperate enough to conform to what Uncle Dennis and Kawhi were asking for, which then resulted in Kawhi signing with the Clippers. Now, many people then ask the question, why isn't it that the endorsement deal immediately kicked in as soon as Kawhi signed with the Clippers? Because for people who don't know, Kawhi doesn't sign the aspiration endorsement deal until 2021. Many people then follow that up by saying the reason why they didn't immediately give Kawhi an endorsement deal that he asked for is because at the time the Clippers were being investigated by the NBA for potentially tampering with Kawhi throughout the entire process of them trying to sign him in that offseason. Now, to be fair to the Clippers, the league did not find any evidence of them tampering. However, there's a lot of allegations saying otherwise, but gotta be fair to the Clippers, no evidence was found of them tampering during the summer of 2019 or even before that. However, fast forward to 2021, it's now August, and Kawhi is signing a 4-year, $170 million contract extension. A month later, Steve Ballmer invests $50 million into the startup company by the name of Aspiration. Now, for people who don't know what Aspiration is and what they do, they're basically a broker company that allows you to manage your carbon footprint. To make it even easier for you, you go out there, you pollute in the environment, and the company Aspiration will effectively plant trees on your behalf to manage how much carbon you offset when you're polluting. That's literally all that they do. And Steve Ballmer invests $50 million into this company. Gotta love it when you're that wealthy, man. Doggone, just throwing around money left and right. So $50 million in September of 2021. And then later on that month, Aspiration and the Clippers have a $300 million partnership where Aspiration is basically going to be on the patch and all over the Intuit Dome when they start to build it up. This is important because later on down his timeline, Adam Silver claims that he had no idea of Aspiration, but it's later revealed that it's practically impossible that he did not know anything about Aspiration because any type of deal to this magnitude had to be cleared by the NBA. Adam Silver later walks it back, but let it be known that without a doubt, the NBA and Adam Silver had to know something about Aspiration. Fast forward to November of 2021, and from what Steve Ballmer claimed in the beginning of November 2021, Aspiration asked the Clippers and Steve Ballmer to be introduced to Kawhi Leonard. Ballmer complied and introduced Kawhi to Aspiration. And the reason why this is important is because later on that exact same month, November 22nd, is when Kawhi registered his new business named KL2 Aspire Enterprise LLC. Now, why exactly is this important? Well, if you're going to make a new business, a new LLC, you would only do so if you are expecting a consistent revenue flow that's coming in, right? If you're signing a normal endorsement deal that's going to be paid once or twice, or even if it is reoccurring, it's not going to be anything of significance, you probably wouldn't make a completely new business. You would probably just sign it through your own personal account. Unless you knew that you were going to sign a near $50 million endorsement deal that was going to pay you quarterly over the next 4 years. Maybe you would do it then. Now, this would be very easy to explain if, I don't know, you gave me 2 to 3 months to negotiate such a large endorsement deal. However, if what Ballmer said is correct, and I don't know why he gave out this information when he sat down with Ramona Shelburne on ESPN, but if what Ballmer said is correct, that means that he introduced Kawhi to Aspiration in the beginning of November, and by the end of November, November 22nd, he had already felt comfortable enough to make a new LLC. That sounds like something you already knew was going to happen before you actually sat down. But hey, that's my opinion. All for allegations, to be clear. Don't want to be sued. But those are just my thoughts. Now, fast forward to April 4th, 2022, and that's when Kawhi officially signs his endorsement deal with Aspiration. Now, originally, it was reported that this was a $28 million endorsement deal that was going to be paid quarterly over the course of 4 years. However, later reports revealed that it wasn't just $28 million in cash, but also $20 million in stocks that would have been paid out at the end of the 4-year period, which then is a combine of $48 million, which is really close to the original $50 million investment that Ballmer made earlier on in the process. Now, why all of this is also very interesting information. A, the amount of money that Kawhi is getting paid is a lot. So much so that there are other celebrities who have signed endorsement deals with Aspiration, and even all of their endorsement deals combined still is nowhere near close to what Kawhi is making. Matter of fact, Kawhi is making 3 to 4 times more than every other celebrity endorsement deal combined. And they have celebrities to the tone of Robert Downey Jr. and Drake. So Kawhi is making significantly more money than everybody else combined. Another massive red flag is the way in which this contract is written out. Obligations, which are really just suggestions, are vaguely written and are very low threshold for someone who's making this much money, such as you only have to do a handful of retweets, you only have to take 1 picture a month, you only have to sign a handful of autographs, nothing of significance that would warrant this much money. And also, the way that the contract is written, Kawhi doesn't have to do any of these obligations at any point if he believes that the company does not align with his beliefs. And because Kawhi's beliefs are not outlined in the contract, it allows him to basically just say, man, I don't want to have to do anything whatsoever, and I can get away with doing so. And that's effectively what ended up happening, because as time has revealed, there is no indication whatsoever that Kawhi Kawhi has done anything for this company in terms of being a brand ambassador or endorsing aspiration. But what may be an even bigger red flag is the simple fact that the only way to void this contract is if Kawhi no longer plays for the Clippers. No morality clause that would void this contract, no timeline with the obligations of when these things are due, none of that. Only way to avoid this contract is if Kawhi no longer plays for the Clippers. Very interesting. And oh yes, as all this is happening, when Kawhi's contract is being drafted up, it is later revealed through other executives, allegedly, that no one was able to comb through or do any due diligence with Kawhi and his contracts, because if they would have, they clearly would have objected and rejected the idea of bringing on Kawhi, regardless of the amount of money, because he just wasn't a good fit for the company and the brand. But when the contract was eventually brought to the attention of some of the higher execs, it was presented to them as a as-is situation, and you cannot object to this. We just have to accept the fact that Kawhi is a part of the team. He's getting paid XYZ amount of money. And oh yeah, while all this is happening, the Clippers also pay $32 million for carbon credits. So there's that as well. Now fast forward to the middle of June of 22, and the Clippers, once more, purchased $21 million in carbon credits. So now we're talking about north of $50 million already spent within a handful of months' time. Then later on at the end of June, the first payment that Kawhi is owed of $1.75 million is already late and doesn't get paid until July 6th. That is important to highlight because while this is happening, Uncle Dennis is constantly calling them, trying to figure out where the paper at. Then later on, at the end of 2022, the company is already failing. It's already falling apart. They're late on their payments. They're not paying certain celebrities. They're not paying their bills. Matter of fact, they're so much in shambles that they're facing litigation. And despite all of that happening, Clippers minority owner Dennis Wong invests nearly $2 million into the company while being privy to this information. Now, of course, this is highly questionable because why would you invest $2 million into a failing company? But also be very mindful at this point in time, bro, Aspiration had raised hundreds of millions of dollars. You investing $2 million into a company that is on pace to go public, you're getting like a fraction of a percentage of the company. That's not really investing into something. You're not really getting much out of that $2 million. So why would you, regardless of who you are, invest $2 million into a company, a failing one at that? Why would you do that? Unless after you invest in it on December 6th, on December 15th, Kawhi gets paid $1.75 million. And oh yes, just so you understand how much in shambles this company was, on the same day that Kawhi gets his second payment, the company lays off 20% of their staff. Now fast forward to the beginning of 2023, March to be precise, Steve Ballmer randomly just invests another $10 million into this company. Again, be very mindful that it's failing, litigation is looming, they're laying off people to the tune of 20 to 30%, and yet he still decides to invest $10 more million. Interesting. Now, fast forward throughout the remainder of 2023, there are constant questioning of why exactly do they have to keep paying Kawhi. Everyone is trying to figure out, why does Kawhi keep getting paid when we're not paying other people, other entities, bills are not being paid, we're laying off a bunch of people, but for whatever reason, we're still paying Kawhi. It does not make any sense. Allegedly, this is all alleged that these conversations are happening, despite the fact that there are some very credible emails that were highlighted throughout one of Pablo Torre's podcast episodes. That does get highlighted. But now fast forward to 2024, and in total, the Clippers had purchased nearly $118 million in carbon credits, and by the end of 2024, Aspiration had filed for bankruptcy, and on their books, it was revealed that they owed the Clippers $30 million, as well as Kawhi owing him $7 million, which would be the remaining amount of money that they would owe him on the last year of his contract, implying that they consistently paid Kawhi up until 2024, going on to what should have been 2025. So they were on time when it came to paying Kawhi, but everyone else, not so much. And for the people out there who don't know what happened with Aspiration, as they have, like I stated before, filed for bankruptcy, it was later revealed earlier this year that this was a fraudulent company. It was a whole scam, so much so that one of the co-founders, and Joe Sandberg, has now pled guilty to wire fraud. So this is a fraudulent company that Steve Ballmer and the Clippers were pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into. In particular, Steve Ballmer, with his original $50 million investment and then another $10 million investment, had a total of $60 million of his own money and then $2 million from Dennis Wong. Be very mindful that towards the mid of 2022, towards the tail end of that year, no one else is consistently investing into this company outside of the Clippers, Steve Ballmer, and Dennis Wong. It's not to say that no one else invested into it, but the degree of consistency that was seen from someone either attached to the Clippers organization or Steve Ballmer himself is definitely odd in contrast to everyone else that was involved with this $100 million fundraising that we saw from this company. So in short, what's being alleged, Kawhi came over to the Clippers, made some demands about getting endorsement deal money that he didn't want to have to do much for to receive. They didn't provide that to him until 2021, allegedly. And while doing so, Steve Ballmer and the Clippers or Dennis Wong were consistently funneling in a bunch of money to a company that was later revealed to be fraudulent. And on the back end, Kawhi was getting paid through an endorsement deal to the tune of nearly $50 million to where he didn't have to do literally anything whatsoever, like literally nothing. So that's what's effectively happening over the course of a handful of years. Now, Adam Silver is also very interesting in this mix because originally he claimed that he didn't know anything about aspiration, but then walked that back because there's absolutely no way that Adam Silver and the NBA were not made aware of aspiration when they had a $300 million partnership with the Clippers in the early stages of this timeline. So that's impossible that he just did not know. He eventually walked it back. But overall, though, the big reason why Adam Silver is a huge piece of this puzzle, not only because he's a commissioner of this league and it is believed that the amount of money that was being pumped into this company at some degree was incentivized to pay Kawhi Leonard this ridiculous amount of nearly $50 million. Adam Silver really doesn't have any other choice but to be hard on this circumstance. Because if he does not throw the book at Steve Ballmer and the Clippers, well, effectively, if you're saying that this is okay, you have now given an outline to every team and owner in the NBA on how they can circumvent the cap moving forward. Everyone now knows you can just go get a shell company, pump money into the company, and on the back end, have the company use some of that money to pay a player that is now on an endorsement deal. So many people kind of just feel like this is it, dog. Like it's pretty cut and dry. If you don't do anything, then everybody's going to now use this as an outline in ways in which you circumvent the cap without having to technically circumvent the cap. So that's where we are right now. That's how everything goes. In short, Kawhi signs a contract, an endorsement deal with a company where he doesn't have to do anything. And that same company, hundreds of millions of dollars at this point, is being pumped in through this company, through Steve Ballmer, regardless if it's straight up investment or through carbon credits. And many people believe that they were using that money to then pay Kawhi Leonard to effectively do nothing. If Kawhi did just one thing, just one, a little bit of endorsing of this company, this probably wouldn't be a story. But the fact that he literally did absolutely nothing is why we are where we are right now. But yo, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And until next time, I'll see you later. Peace.